Welcome back to your favorite show,
Crossing the Mic.
Hadn't done that in a while. So today we're talking very, very 90s thing.
Mm-hmm.
Early 2000s, probably 90s, I'd say.
Up into the 2000s, I believe.
We're going to talk about the infamous
Monday Night Wars with Lee Big Money.
So, without further ado, let's bring in our special guest.
What's up?
Oh, no.
So, yes, I am the host of Money's Crazy Mind. Yes, this is normally one of my backgrounds when it is Money's Crazy Mind, but it doesn't fit the t-shirt. I need to feel at home a little bit more. What do you guys think of this?
Nice.
Huh? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. WCW Monday Nitro, baby.
Question before we get started.
What's up?
We're only streaming on Redline Radio.
Nope, you are on Roanoke. I have it on there. It says it's live.
Are we?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. Okay. I'm a special guy. Sounds about right. I like the background.
Yes. I thought it was apropos.
Why can't I see that?
Your phone sucks.
It does.
Oh. Sorry about the grunts. I'm getting old.
Yeah, we all are. Don't worry about it.
Got to find the right position where my back's not killing me.
How do I know?
Okay, that'll work for the next 2 minutes.
You guys hear-
The next
Are you guys able to hear my sound effects?
a little bit.
Okay. Because I was smacking Josh for stupidity, and I couldn't hear it. There we go.
That is so weird. Like I see it now, but I don't know why I couldn't see it before. That was weird. Anyway,
Moving on.
Maybe you just didn't give it enough time. So anyway, unfortunately, we picked the wrong week to decide to talk about this. Did you guys hear the news from yesterday or maybe last Friday?
For right now. I mean, it was
But
happen later anyways.
Well, not for the reason that it happened.
No.
I mean, it didn't happen because Vince was just way too old. But, he's being investigated for allegations of a hush money payment to a now former employee to who he had an alleged affair with. And John Laurinaitis, or should we say Johnny Bella, is now also part of that investigation. And Vince was replaced by Stephanie. So here's what I've been able to figure out about this whole thing. He allegedly had an affair with a woman that was hired with WWE as a paralegal in 2019. This investigation started in January. And the separation agreement bars the now former employee who was hired as a paralegal from discussing her relationship with Mr. McMahon or disparaging him. The board's investigation began in April and has unearthed another older non-disclosure agreement involving claims by a former female WWE employees of misconduct by Mr. McMahon and his top executives, John Laurinaitis, who was the head of talent relations. They couldn't
Johnny.
determine how many previous agreements were being scrutinized. Now, it's funny because there is a rumor that some of this might be stemming from the reason Paige was just recently released by WWE.
And I thought she'd been gone for a while.
She just can't wrestle.
She cannot,
Yeah.
but she is still an employee,
Oh.
or was,
Yeah.
until a couple days ago.
Hmm.
But I just found it interesting. Like, you know, here we are, we're talking about this, and yet Paige, you know, or this whole thing came out the other day, and it's like, man, our timing is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
But what's up, guys?
What's up, Jimmy?
Hey, I'm gonna have to let y'all take over on this one just because
I call everybody Jimmy.
I don't know.
What up, Rome?
Oh,
We're actually just getting started. You haven't missed much.
Nope.
All right.
All right. So where shall we start?
Well,
we want to start with Jim Crockett.
are we breaking down the entire Monday Night War?
Might as well. Not
Oh,
like in great depth, but a lot of the big moments. You know, Hall and Nash and all that. Collapse of WCW with the NWO and the mismanagement and all that crap.
Okay. Well, if you want to go into the Jim Crockett part of it, go right ahead.
It's all you.
Oh, send me that.
Come on now. Come on.
Because I don't know much about the Jim Crockett era. I know more from.
I don't know a lot of it either. I just know that towards the end of Jim Crockett Jr. owning it,
Mhm.
you know, he started losing money and ended up selling out to Ted Turner. And that's when it became WCW.
Yes. Jim Crockett did sell a portion of Jim Crockett Promotions to Ted Turner, and he turned it into WCW, World Championship Wrestling. And he ended up having to buy a portion of WWE, which a lot of people don't know, because Vince actually did own the name World Class or World Championship Wrestling. So for a while, WCW was technically a WWE company before 2001 when the shit hit the fan. So after that, you know, Ted started putting it on TBS at 6:05, and the company never made money. Never saw a penny of profit. But he couldn't find somebody to run it properly. So they went through former wrestler, former promoter, after former wrestler, after former promoter, after former wrestler, after former promoter. And each one was trying to do things the way that either the territory they wrestled in worked or the territory they ran worked. So there was never a clear and concise way of making things work. And for the audience that Ted was trying to get, I mean, if you heard some of the shit Bill Watts was trying to do, it would blow your mind. Bill Watts didn't know what the hell was going on. He wanted no choke slams, no. He had some crazy rules. Let's just leave it at that. So finally, Vince dropped the ball, and he didn't hire Eric Bischoff. So Eric got the call, went over to WCW, interviewed, got the third string, like, hi, this has been recorded for television announcer job.
Yeah,
he was Jim Ross.
Third announcer behind Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross.
Yes. Love the Monday Night Wars, jumping between channels, trying to catch the best of each show. That's what Beer Tank ASMR said. And then here we have Rome, one of the hosts of 4th and 15 Saturdays, 2 to 4 on Redline Radio. The no top rope moves rule. Yes, exactly. That's the kind of crazy shit I'm talking about here, Rome.
Well, he took up the mats outside too. He made it towards bare concrete.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was trying to make it 70s pro wrestling when 70s pro wrestling didn't work in the early 90s. And that's basically the biggest issue that I saw with the way that a lot of these people were trying to run the business. So they had heard, or should I say, Eric Bischoff had heard that the executive vice president of television job was open. And he interviewed for it, not thinking he was even going to remotely get the job. And somehow got the job. So he has a meeting with Ted, and Ted basically asks him, Eric, what do you got to do to beat Vince McMahon in ratings? Eric thought about it for like 20 seconds. Give me prime time, Monday night, going right up against Raw. Say no more. WCW Monday Nitro was born. And from night one, Nitro was live, and Nitro was full of surprises.
Now,
the very first Monday Nitro.
Test your knowledge a bit. Do you know where the first Nitro was aired without cheating and looking?
Nope, I do not.
Can I answer?
Yeah.
The Mall of America.
That's it. And then after I don't remember exactly how many weeks, but they ended up at the Disney lot.
Well, they toured around for a little bit, for like the first, I want to say, month. And then Bischoff inked the deal to be at the Disney MGM lot. And they were there about a year, maybe a little bit longer. But okay, hold on. What contracted WCW or WWE wrestler appeared on the very first Monday Nitro?
Well, we know it wasn't Hulk Hogan, because that didn't happen until they were on the Disney lot.
Hogan was already in WCW at this point. Hogan signed with WCW in 94, 95. Nitro didn't air until late 95.
Are we sure about that?
Yes. Because he was already shooting.
Whatever y'all say.
He was already shooting Thunder in Paradise by the time Nitro started.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right.
If Ron was right,
Forgot all about Paradise.
The total package, Lex Luger.
Actually, yeah, that's right. Because he had left, his contract was up the night before, and he showed up there.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. I forgot about that. Because it came out, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, why is he here?" Horrible. I know.
Bobby the Brain Heenan would soon follow, and he would be on commentary. But I mean, that was like the big thing. Like everybody was watching Nitro every week. Who's going to jump ship? Who's going to show up next? And I think probably the most famous one next to these two would be Rick Rude. Because Rick appeared
Since he appeared
on Raw.
twice.
He appeared on Raw and Nitro on the exact same night because WWE was pre-taped. But that to me was probably my favorite time of wrestling because literally I would watch the first hour of Nitro, hit record, switch over to Raw. If Raw sucked, I'd stop recording Nitro, start recording Raw, and then jump back to Nitro. But whichever one I thought was better for what I wanted to see that night would be the one that didn't get recorded. However, in my hometown, if you disconnected your cable, there was a channel that you could watch ECW on. So once I discovered that, dual deck the VCRs, record Raw on one, Nitro on the other, and watch ECW on fuzzy ass TV that barely worked.
That sounds about right.
But you know, it's crazy because ECW doesn't get any of the credit for a lot of the things that they contributed to the Monday Night War.
In the documentary.
On the Monday Night War for the WWE Network, yes. But in reality, not a lot of people give ECW credit. Because for some reason, everybody seems to forget that Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit,
Jericho,
Saturn, and a bunch of other people were all poached from ECW at the same time. Chris Jericho, Rey Mysterio, Psychosis. I mean, have I named the entire Cruiserweight division yet? All those names came from ECW. And the only reason they went to WCW is this. Eric had more of it than Paul. That's it.
Well, and that's what it comes down to anyway, is money.
Yeah, unfortunately.
You know, ECW just wasn't my thing.
Well, this show's over. Goodbye. No.
You know, it wasn't for everybody. Just like now, I mean, the product, you know, on WWE sucks.
Nowadays.
You know, and now it's not going to get any better.
Mm-mm.
CM Punk said it first. Got the dim-witted daughter running it.
It'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Stephanie can do because, you know, when Hunter was in charge of NXT was amazing.
Yep, I actually watched NXT then.
And then,
you know, but once they got rid of NXT, once they got rid of Triple H, NXT started to suffer, and by that point, everybody had an alternative on Wednesday night, and that was AEW Dynamite. But I'm curious to see what happens now. We'll give it a wait and see kind of situation.
oh, don't be doing that.
But Josh, what was one of your favorite moments from the Monday Night War?
There was a few. I mean, for me, obviously the birth of the Outsiders, and then the birth of the NWO as Hogan being the third man. That was a good one. You know, and then on the flip side of that, you know, the birth of Stone Cold. That was always my favorite, though. You know, get to see, if you look back, you get to see him transform from Stunning Steve into the Ringmaster into Stone Cold. And the transformation there was great. You know, and also the big thing for me, the really big thing that set WWE apart from WCW at the time was the Austin McMahon rivalry. I mean, that's not what won it, but that helped.
It was the start. I'll give it the start. But for me, the first thing was that very first Nitro. You have a contracted WWE wrestler show up. And then, you know, NWO, of course, the birth of Steve Austin, the birth of D-Generation X. But the big one that I definitely think helped WWE.
The Undertaker.
Yeah, he'd been around a while at that point.
Now you're playing with buttons.
New board.
Oh, no. I'm going to smack your hand away.
Yep. You never know.
God, that's a creepy, creepy voice.
Well, what about you, Tyler? What was your
for
favorite?
me, I didn't get into wrestling. I couldn't watch a lot of it. So the first match I remember, because I mean, I grew up in the church and my mom hated that stuff. So like WWE, there's no way I could watch that just because of, the cussing, all the, bra and panty matches, stuff like that.
Before 97, they didn't really have that.
Well, and this is how late I was to even get into it. But I could get away with WCW because a friend of my mom's, her husband watched wrestling, and I got to stay there and watch it was WCW. So that's how I ended up being able to watch that. But the match I remember was, and they said, I don't remember what year, but I was younger, but it was probably well into the war. And so, I mean, it was like Goldberg versus Nash in a ladder match, and Nash, I think, like tasered Goldberg, and then the pay-per-view ended.
Okay. Yeah, you're talking about like the end
Yes.
of the Monday Night War.
That's when I got into wrestling for a small period of time.
That's when that's when everybody's like, this shit sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Let's change the channel.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, the product didn't start sucking until there was a leash put on Bischoff, and then they brought Russo in. Because before that, they didn't have standards and practices like they did after, and Turner was in charge then, but by that point, when it started to decline, he wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, but Vince Russo had sold WCW a bill of goods. He was just like, every great idea, bro, let me tell you, bro, every great idea that happened over in WWE, bro, was mine. What they didn't realize is that there's one thing that WWE has or had that WCW didn't. And that was the Vincent Kennedy McMahon filter. No idea got greenlit without Vince's permission. So yeah, Russo might have written it, but it would have never made air without Vince's approval. So because of that, now he has free reign. I can do whatever I want, bro. I'm gonna put the World Heavyweight Championship on David Arquette, bro.
That was when Ready to Rumble came out,
Yeah,
right?
that wasn't even the worst thing, though. You had the Judy Bagwell on a forklift
Oh.
match.
Oh my God.
No idea what we're talking about.
Eric Ball on a pole match. Snap it to a Slim Jim. Ooh, yeah.
I mean, you know, Bischoff actually had a lot of really good ideas, but when the handcuffs got put on, that's when all of it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he wasn't afraid to cross the line, and he did. I think part of the issue that killed him, not to jump ahead real quick, but you know, you look at DX, for example, they only grew to maybe 5 or 6 members, and it wasn't consistently all the time. You know, Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, even though they were a part of it, they did their own thing. And
Yes.
then you look at the NWO, and they went from 3 people to 50.
And then
of
they were
course,
different divisions.
you're ruining the product.
What made the original NWO work was the fact that it was 3 people that, well, 2 people that nobody knew were even hired by WCW. And they kept hinting to this third guy. And they were planting seeds on who the third guy could have possibly been. If you remember, the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, showed up in the fans before Bash at the Beach ever happened. And you've got Medusa coming over and dropping the belt in the garbage. You've got all these former WWE guys coming in, but yet none of them were ever announced as the third man.
Now,
Now,
do you remember who was actually going to be the third man?
yes. I'm waiting to see if Tyler knows.
Oh no, I don't know
Oh,
anything.
He's an icon, bro. Now, he's an icon. Seriously. Been around since the late 70s, early 80s. Face paint, flat top. Towards the middle of his
Talking
career.
Sting.
Yeah.
Yes. Sting was approached to be the third member of the NWO, but Sting was on a huge babyface run at that point and was worried it would kill his career. On top of that, Sting was the brilliant mind that said it should not be somebody who has been WCW since day one. It should be somebody who used to be in WWE. So then that's when they went to Hogan. Now, mind you, Hogan was kind of taking a break. He was filming Thunder in Paradise. He was doing a bunch of stuff. And he goes, I don't know, brother. I don't know if this is right for my career.
That sounds a little too much.
But he thought about it.
Macho Man.
Huh?
I said, that sounds a little too much like Macho Man.
They don't sound that different.
It's true.
But anyway, he started watching some of the stuff that they were doing. And he calls Bischoff and he goes, hey, brother, did Sting turn this down? And he goes, yes. It's mine. So then that's when Bash at the Beach happens. He turns his back on Sting and Luger, drops an elbow on him, drops a leg on him, and then sides with the NWO. That was the day I became a Hulk Hogan fan. I was never a fan of Hogan before that.
Well, there were a lot of people involved in talking him into that. I mean, it wasn't just, wasn't just him. I mean, Kevin Sullivan had a hand in that too. As much as I hate to say that.
Well, I mean, you had Sullivan, you had Terry Taylor. At that point, Jimmy Hart was doing a lot with Hogan's creative. So you had Jimmy Hart. I mean, and these are names. Terry Taylor, the Red Rooster. Ooh. Anyway. But, I mean, these were all people that were trying to convince him that this was the right thing he needed to do for his career. And personally, I think he made the right choice. The say your prayers, eat your vitamins, train every day. Hulk Hogan was dead. Hulkamania was dead. But then you bring in Hollywood. The Hogan that's more worried about making money and making movies and becoming a household name in shitty-ass movies like Mr. Nanny.
I was about to say, you better not have said anything bad about Suburban Commando. That's all I'm saying.
There's PKE meters in it. No.
Shoot, Undertaker was in that movie.
Yeah.
I was going to say that because I was done chewing.
Although, him
I
and
loved
his Thunder Lips in Rocky 3
That's what I
was
was gonna
enjoyable,
say.
though.
It's all a part of the game, dog.
Mhm. Oh, and then 4 Ninjas 4. I mean, seriously, come on.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Oh, yeah, because what was the name of that movie? No Holds Barred.
Something
Worthy.
something Mountain. I don't know. Jim Varney was in it, and it's a shame that was one of his last movies.
Do.
Player.
No, I mean, because No Holds Barred was just such a great Oscar-winning success that
Not at
Hogan
all.
continue making movies after that.
High Noon at Mega Mountain. God, that was going to bug me if I didn't look it up.
That even sounds stupid.
Oh, it was. It was horrible.
Oh, it was horrible.
But with everything, the yellow and red Hulk Hogan was 80s, and it should have stayed there. To be honest,
Well, how did that work out?
how did that work out?
Yeah.
The 80s.
How did leaving Hulkamania in the
No.
80s work out? Because here it is, 96, and the dude's still trying to sell us on it.
Well, no, that's what I was saying. It worked in the 80s. It didn't work after that.
Mhm.
What in the world?
Sorry. Had to fix something. It's just one of the ads from my show. All the places you can find Money's Crazy Mind.
Shameless plug.
God, these voices are creepy.
Uh,
Yeah, get one of those in?
come on, bro.
No, I guess I kind of actually like this one. This one's not too bad. We should do the whole episode this way, then nobody will know who's talking. Our faces are showing. Okay, I gotta stop this.
That's getting to be too much.
All you need
I have
to do is
the-
blur your face,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Shave my beard. No one knows who I am.
Oh, God.
Oh, no, I'm not shaving it. I'm just saying. No one would know.
I came close,
Shaving
looking
yours?
like a meatball. But no, I mean, everybody likes a villain, and I've talked to a few indie wrestlers, and everybody says the same thing. And you watch interviews with wrestlers that are heels; they all tell you the same thing. It's easy to make somebody hate you, and
It's
that's
hard to make
exactly what
somebody-
happened. I mean, think about that night. What happened when that happened? I mean, they were all worried about whether they were going to make it out of there alive.
Look at all this crap in the ring.
It was. I mean, WCW at that time wasn't like WWE at that time, which was very cartoonish. WCW was more reality based. They made you believe what was happening was real.
Yeah. And you got to think, one of the greatest moments leading up to Bash at the Beach was when they punched Eric Bischoff in the gut and threw him through a table, leading in to the Great American Bash. Nobody knew that Bischoff was in charge. Nobody. They just thought he was the commentator, Ken Doll looking motherfucker. That night, and people still really didn't believe it, because you have Hall and Nash just sitting there asking him, did he sign the check? Is the check cashed? Do you have your 3 guys? But nobody knew. Nobody knew.
And see, at that time, they didn't use their names.
No, they were just the outsiders.
Yeah. It was
But that was also because of a lawsuit from WWE. Because Razor was still coming out with the Superman curl. And, he kind of had a lot of the mannerisms of Razor Ramon. But Kevin Nash was not coming out doing anything like Diesel. But they were afraid that that's what was going to happen. So WWE had a lawsuit against them saying, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then they realized that's just Scott Hall. Scott Hall is the, hey, yo, and the toothpick and all that. He was doing that before he was Razor Ramon. And that's actually what WCW said. They go, well, technically, we should be suing you because he was doing that when he was the Diamond Stud, when he worked here the first time. So WWE is kind of just like, all right, just don't call him Razor and Diesel, and you don't have a problem. So then WCW was about ready to sue them because all of a sudden, the next week on Raw, the return of Razor Ramon and Diesel. But it was actually Glenn Jacobs who was being Diesel, who would later go on to have great fame in WWE as Kane. And I forgot who the fake Razor was.
Yeah, and
but
he
it was
died
funny because everybody, huh?
He died a year or two back.
Yeah. But it was funny because everybody at WCW was standing around the monitor waiting to see if Scott and Kevin fucked him over after they just gave them a $10,000 raise. And then all of a sudden they walk up behind him. Hey, what you guys watching? Great moment. Great moment. But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the things that was happening in WWE or in WCW during that time that made it more realistic. But I think the other moment that made it so realistic that fans were just like, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall started attacking people behind the scenes. And it was so realistic, fans were calling the police and ambulances to show up at the Disney MGM Grand lot. And they had to basically be like, we're sorry, it's a bit for TV. But it was great. So great. I mean, they literally picked up poor little Rey Mysterio and lawn darted his ass into the side of a production truck.
Yeah, I mean, if you were a huge wrestling fan, you would know that the way that it happened, it wasn't real.
Or would you?
But to the casual fan,
you watch the clip because if you watch it consistently,
it looks real as fuck. It is so real.
Now I tell you, once the war was fully on, the big thing for me was, and I remember this vividly on Raw, DX invading WCW. They just happened to be in the same town. And
right across
they rolled right up to the Coliseum and banged on the door.
Well, now here's a funny story about that. If you talk to Scott and Kevin, they're sitting there. Obviously, they had no idea this was going to happen. But X-Pac, Triple H, they were their friends. So they hear, Triple H and X-Pac are on the other side of the wall. Well, let them in. What are you doing? This would be a great television moment. NWO versus D-Generation X. And it's not on their product. It's on ours. And security's just like, no, we can't do that. Huge liability. And it was just a botched moment by WCW. But the other funny thing about that is, if you talk to Eric Bischoff, he's just like, I wanted to let them in. Security wouldn't let me because Scott and Kevin are right. That would have been the biggest moment in the history of Monday Night, and it would have been on Monday Nitro.
It'd have been on Raw, too.
Not on Raw. But you got to remember, Raw was pre-taped. Nitro wasn't. So it would have aired live on Nitro. And they weren't well, maybe Raw was live at that point.
I think it was.
Since they were recording that earlier in the day, it wouldn't have been live for Raw. They would have had to get the cameraman back, edit the footage, and get it ready for air.
That's true.
Right. Whereas WCW would have been like, look at this. Look who's walking down the aisle. It's D-Generation X. You know Eric Bischoff would have taken advantage of that.
Yeah.
Taking a huge advantage of that.
That was a huge moment too. Because if you listen to some of D-Generation X, they tell you, they didn't know what was going to happen.
They just showed up.
They did it to do it, and they didn't know what the end result was going to be. But
to me, I think one of my other top moments would have been the night that WCW really screwed the pooch. And that was the night they gave away.
Oh, yeah.
That Mick Foley was going to win the WWE World Heavyweight Championship from The Rock live on Raw. And everybody went, click.
And see, the thing with that too is, and they didn't realize this. In hindsight, 20, it is what it is. But when you're a wrestling fan and you hear there's going to be a title change, you're going to tune into that because that usually doesn't happen on regular TV. That's usually pay-per-view type of thing.
Pay-per-view. Yeah.
So that's where they screwed up. Yeah, and I agree.
But the other thing that they screwed up on with that was you have Tony Schiavone say over on the other network, Mick Foley, who used to wrestle here as Cactus Jack, is going to win their World Heavyweight Championship. Boy, that's going to put some butts in seats. Well, it may not have put some butts in seats, but it certainly put some eyeballs on some TVs because 90% of the audience switched. Up until that moment, WCW was winning the ratings war that night.
Yep.
Then you follow that up with the fucking finger poke of doom. Oh, you don't remember that?
Doom. Jeez.
Kevin Nash versus Hulk Hogan.
Oh, yeah.
For the title. Everybody thought it was going to be the end of the NWO altogether. Because you got Hogan as the face of NWO Hollywood. You've got Nash as the face of NWO Wolfpack. Nash, it looks like he's reeling back. Poke. Hogan falls down. 1, 2, 3. Big, huge joke by the NWO. Wolfpack, NWO back together. Congratulations, we screwed you all.
Oh, you're watching it.
What, the finger
So-
poke of doom?
Yeah. I had no idea.
So while he's taking a peek at that, what do you think about? Well, yeah, there it is. 1, 2, 3. Hogan wins. Within regards to
Jeez.
WCW at that time
Sorry.
and what was WWF, WWE, who do you think the better faction was coming out of that? Not necessarily starting it, because, I mean, that's obvious. And out of that faction,
Ruben brings up a point here.
who do you
If the
think?
NWO would have kept it the way they were, they got their idea from, they'd still be today. Yep, exactly. If they would have just kept it Hogan, Nash, and Hall, would have been fine. But when you bring in Mach, when you bring in Sting, when you bring in the fucking kitchen sink, you blend too much fake
It
into
dilutes it. But
There is no way to call in tonight, Rome. Unfortunately, those guys are in Roanoke. I'm at home. Go ahead.
out of all the both groups, one, who was your favorite wrestler from each group, DX and NWO, and had you had to pick a faction, whether it be NWO or DX, because everybody had a choice on that one. I feel like.
Who would I have chosen and was and why?
Yeah, and which faction do you think was better during the wars? Not necessarily at the beginning or the end, because both of those are pretty obvious.
Okay. So for me, there would be no D-Generation X without the NWO. So for that, for me, the NWO has always been my favorite. Now, don't get me wrong, I love DX. But DX was different. The DX was all about Sonny Ono managed it. Right. No, yeah, I know that story, Rum. I'll get to that in a second. For me, NWO would not have worked without Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. It had to be two people that were not associated in some way with WCW.
Agreed.
So it's always been the outsiders for me. It's always been NWO. Now, because Shawn and Hunter were friends with Hall and Nash, I have a feeling that if Hall and Nash had never left the clique, all the members of the clique would have become DX. And we would have seen a lot of the NWO antics come out of DX than we saw with NWO. What made NWO and DX different to me was NWO was all about a hostile takeover, whereas DX was bucking the system. They didn't like Sergeant Slaughter. They didn't like Vince, but Vince was still just doing commentary, so they were going after Slaughter. And it was more fun and games. Like, I think the old line from Jim Ross was always the sophomore class field trip. And that's kind of what DX was to me. Whereas the NWO, they're like, nope, we've been getting fucked. Now it's our turn to take over. if that makes sense. If I had to choose which one would still be around today, I kind of have to agree with Rome, and it would be the NWO, because DX doesn't work without Triple H or Shawn Michaels. Because the second you take those two out, DX doesn't work. It worked for a while with Pac, but that's because Pac and Shawn and Triple H were all one and the same person. And the New Age Outlaws kind of just fell into that. But if you were to try to do DX today without any of those guys, DX would fail. Whereas you can take the NWO, huh?
It's too PG now.
Well, that too. But you could take the NWO and you could take, let's say MJF does actually jump ship and go to the WWE. You can start an NWO-like storyline with MJF, and then he can bring over, let's say, Kenny Omega, or let's say the Young Bucks. You know, any of those AEW original guys, even though they were New Japan guys before they were AEW, and I understand that. But you could take any of those guys that have never worked in WWE, slap NWO colors on them, and you can do a new generation of NWO. But like I said, DX does not work without a Shawn Michaels or a Triple H.
Okay. And I can get behind that. You know, for me, during the wars, it was more DX. And the only reason I say that, you know, because it's not that I hated or didn't like the NWO. I think that towards the middle of what was going on, it was so diluted that the product was beginning to suffer. And then if you look at,
they killed themselves.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the way DX was, yeah, sure, there was 5 of them, or 6, including China. But it was like what the NWO started out to be is you never know what's going to happen. You never know what they're going to do and how much hell they're going to raise. And for me, I think the breakout star of that faction, obviously, you know, knowing what we know now, but back then was Triple H.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
oh yeah, for sure.
It's a big one
And
too.
You got to think. Before Shawn left, well, actually, let's go back even further. After the curtain call, when Hall and Nash left, one person got punished out of that. Hall and Nash were gone, so they couldn't get punished. Shawn was leaving because he broke his back. So the only one left to get punished for that was Triple H. DX came out of that punishment.
Yeah.
Yes.
And out of that punishment, we also got Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Triple H was slated to win the King of the Ring that year. But this happened. Vince is like, sorry, pal. I know you're going to start fucking my daughter here real soon, but back of the line.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the interview that he did, I think it was in his biography, that My Kingdom Come, but he said basically that at that time, of course, he was super pissed, but looking back on it now, he wouldn't have been ready for that position. The right person was chosen for that position. But the thing of it, too, is he had to learn that he had, you know, at that time, because of what happened, he had to eat plates and plates of shit, so to speak. You know.
Oh, he was eating crow for a long time.
And he took it like he should, and look at where he's at now. Granted, can't wrestle anymore, but
so I want to get to Rome's point here that he put. Long story short, NWO came out of Japan. CTU was the NWO of New Japan Pro Wrestling. Sonny Ono managed everyone, and Liger was one of the big names, and they kept the group small so that they could control each weight class. Yes, and Eric Bischoff admit that he stole it from a New Japan Pro Wrestling storyline. He finally admitted that after all these years. And that's where NWO went wrong. Once everybody and their mom, literally, could become a member of the NWO got stale. When, like I said, if they had just left it Hall, Nash, and Hogan, they probably could have run roughshod over WCW probably still today. There would be no AEW because there'd still be WCW.
I kind of disagree with that. I don't think that WCW, had that not happened, would have made it this long. Because if you look at all the facts behind it, who was it? Time Warner. They didn't want it. They were trying their best to get rid of it, and then they finally had the right reason.
And that reason was because WCW had not turned a profit since 1998. We're talking 96, 97. NWO started getting stale in late 97. If Ted Turner was still in charge, he would have never had to sell WCW. He would have never had to sell Turner Network. But not only that, but you got to think, 98, 99, that's when they started getting rid of Bischoff. That's when they started bringing in Bro. It's his favorite word. That's the only reason why I say it.
While we're on that subject really quick, I did send him an Instagram message, and the word bro was in there 3 times.
Have you listened to his podcast?
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's unlistenable. The only word he says is bro.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just, I don't know. There were so many mistakes that happened. If they had never fired Bischoff initially, the product probably still would have continued to make money. Because they were making more money off of selling these t-shirts than anything else in the company. Not only that, but you had a rising star in Chris Jericho. The man had some of the greatest moments in the latter part of his career in WCW.
Very true, but they didn't know that at that time.
Well, right. I mean, looking back on everything now, but I mean, even Eric Bischoff admitted it on 83 Weeks. We were trying to make something work with Jericho. But the issue was the one thing Jericho wanted, WCW did not want to give him. He wanted Goldberg. And they didn't think that Jericho could handle Goldberg. So he's like,
with a squash match, I think, right?
Initially, yes, because they're like, we can't have you fight Goldberg for real because everybody knows you can beat him. Goldberg was about 3 moves: punch, jackhammer, spear. That's it. He's the John Cena of WCW. Hold 1, arm bar. Hold 2, arm drag. That is probably by far my favorite Chris Jericho promo ever.
It's one
I'm
of
talking
them.
WCW, ECW, WWE, and AEW.
He's had so many though, and almost every one of them was a smash hit.
Oh yeah, but I mean this one was great because he was wrestling Dean Malenko, or he was in a program against Dean Malenko. Dean Malenko at that time was known as the man of 1,000 holds. Jericho was the man of 1,001. So he literally just grabbed a whole ream of the printer paper that had the holes on the sides and was all stuck together, and you had to rip the pages off. And he gets in the ring and he unloads the shit, lets it fall into the ring, and grabs the very first piece of paper and says, hold 1, arm bar. Hold 2, arm drag. And he just keeps going. They go to break. They come back. And he's still reading. And he said arm bar like 50 times. 104. You know what? Fuck you, Rome. But no, to me, one of the greatest, funniest moments. And then Ralphus, Jericho's personal security guard when he was doing a thing against Goldberg. Goldberg would never come out. So I think by the end of it, it was like Jericho 6, Goldberg nothing. And it was awesome. But here's where the other spot where WCW failed. Tell me if you agree. The Montreal Screwjob. The very next night, Bret Hart's contract with WCW started. They wait a year and a half to bring Bret Hart in.
Now, they didn't want him because of him. They wanted him because of what came out of that. Oh God, what's the word I'm thinking of? The hype that he had, you know what I'm saying? And
the clout?
No. I mean, he had so much.
He had heat. Yeah. He had a ton of heat.
And then literally, when he did debut, it was to be a referee.
Yeah. Well, he was supposedly hurt, and he needed some kind of surgery. But I mean, literally, the night before, you are on pay-per-view going WCW in the middle of a WWE ring. You could have come out, surgery or not, you could have come out the next night and capitalized on it. WWF would have been dead in the fucking water at that point. At that point, the biggest name in the game, Bret Hart, is now on that television. He could have aired his grievance. He could have blamed Shawn. He could have blamed Hunter. He could have blamed Vince. He could have blamed Earl Hebner. He could have blamed whoever the fuck he wanted, and the fans would have eaten it up like crazy. And yes, Daniel, you were 100% right. He was out of place. He was out of place. Very out of place, awkward, and bad booking. Exactly. But they still waited a year instead of letting him come out, even with the bum shoulder and everything. He could have done promos. He could have at least been relevant. He could have announced, hey, I need surgery. I'll be back. Then everything that they would have done with him after that would have worked.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go ahead and cut the break. And after the break, we're going to jump into the Monday Night Wars with ECW, the involvement with WWE, and how that transpired over to WCW, and how WWF started winning at that point. Starting not winning, but getting better ratings. So be back little over 12 minutes. Give or take, yeah. Okay. Enjoy the show.
I don't want to go out on my own. Maybe we could stay and make a home. It's written on my heart and in my soul. You're the one good thing. And I don't think I've ever been so low. 'Cause losing you was worse than losing hope. And baby, I could never let you go. You're the one good thing I know. So tell me that it's all okay. Tell me we will find a better way. Just tell me that it's all okay. Just tell me that we'll find a better way. A better way, a better day. There's gotta be, it's you and me, it's everything. A better way, a better day. Just promise me we'll find a better way. Just promise me we'll find a better way. Maybe we should never sleep alone. This isn't how we used to speak so cold. Remember when our hearts would overflow. So tell me that it's all okay. Tell me we will find a better way. Just tell me that it's all okay. Just tell me that we'll find a better way. A better way, a better day. There's gotta be, it's you and me, it's everything. A better way, a better day. Just promise me we'll find a better way. I lost your love, I fucked it up, but we'll be found again. It's not enough, I won't give up, I swear it's not the end. A better way, a better day. There's gotta be, it's you and me, it's everything. A better way, a better day. Just promise me we'll find a better way. Just promise me we'll find a better way.
Just give me an idea. Too easy to see the truth. I never want this to burn out. I never want us to burn down. I didn't lose you, you lost me. You lost me. Whoa. I didn't lose you, you lost me. You lost me. Whoa. I didn't lose you, you lost me. You lost me. Whoa. I didn't lose you, you lost me. Whoa, whoa. I didn't lose you, you lost me. Whoa. I'm driving through the clouds, waiting for the sun to come out. Just wanna see your face, wanna see your face. 'Cause it's the only thing I'm needing now. Raise your God, cheers into life, cheers into life. Hey, raise your God, cheers into life, cheers into life. Whoa. I didn't lose you, you lost me. You lost me. Whoa. I didn't lose you, you lost me. You lost me. Whoa. Raise your God, choose into life, choose into life. Hey, raise your God, choose into life, choose into life. Whoa.
I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about a thing. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about it. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky. I'll take you. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about a thing. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about a thing. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about a thing. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about a thing. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about it. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky. I'll take you. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about a thing. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about a thing. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about a thing. I'll take you high, higher than you've ever been. Gonna touch the sky, don't worry about a thing. I'll take you high.
Can you let me down?
Bro.
Welcome to the land of extreme.
Wrong shirt.
Yeah, well,
All right. Before we dive in,
Bischoff and went to go work with Heyman. Now, Superman was asked a question before we went to break. And it comes from Daniel Price, which begs the question, was the Montreal Screwjab really a work? And Bret sold it like a champ and convincingly. Unfortunately, no. The Montreal Screwjob was a very real thing. Now, it would have never happened if WWE had done the right thing. And here's why I say that. Yes, the champ is historically supposed to relinquish the title or lose the title in some fashion when they're getting ready to leave. Bret had already signed, get out of here, Soups. Bret already signed his contract with WCW. He was out the door regardless. His last match was Survivor Series that year. What had happened was, what do you do with the belt? Bret was the champ. Bret didn't want to drop the title at the pay-per-view because they were in Montreal. He had agreed to come out on Raw the next night and hand over the title. And then they could have put it on Shawn, they could have put it on whoever, and the Montreal Screwjob would have never happened. Triple H, basically, like, he's in a meeting, for some reason, he's in a meeting with Vince at this point, because Hunter had nothing to do with the behind-the-scenes work at WWE at this point. He was just a talent. But he was in a meeting with Bret, Shawn, I believe Bruce Pritchard, Vince Russo, and a couple other people. And Hunter stands up and goes, fuck that. His last night with the company is Survivor Series. If you have to, screw him. And that's where the idea came from. Triple H admitted this. He said it was my idea. So then, how do you do it? Well, they came up with the brilliant idea of when Bret goes for the sharpshooter, Hebner rings the bell. Here's another thing that a lot of people don't know, and God rest his soul because he just died. Earl Hebner decided he didn't want to do this. And Vince basically strong-armed him. Either you do this or you don't have a job. So that's kind of the story behind it. And then Daniel says, yeah, I know. Vince wanted to make him look bad on the way out the door because every option they gave Bret to drop it, he rejected. There's people out there convinced 100% it's a 100% work. There are. But unfortunately, the true story is it was a real thing. And for those who do think it's 100% work, there's a documentary called Wrestling with Shadows. You can watch it for free on YouTube. Where a camera crew
that being said, you can kind of see where he was coming from the other side of that too, because of what happened with Alundra Blaze or Medusa.
And that's what Vince was worried about. He was worried that he was going to walk out on Nitro with the belt and disrespect it the way that Medusa did and everything else. And, okay, I misspoke. It wasn't Earl. It was Earl's brother that passed. And he goes, yeah. And yes, behind closed doors, and you actually hear this in the documentary, I'm sorry, do whatever you got to do. And Bret belts him right in the eye. Gave him a black eye.
But out of that came one of the greatest heels of that time.
Yes. Mr. McMahon.
So,
I mean, and Vince wasn't wrong. Bret screwed Bret. They gave him 101 options. That, you know, he's not right there, or he's not wrong. They gave him 100 options to drop the belt. He didn't want to do any of them because he didn't want to drop the belt in Canada. Well, you're not a Canadian treasure, sir. It wouldn't have mattered where you dropped the belt. Everybody in Canada knew you were out the door too. And they kept chanting, Bret, don't go. But you left. And without Mr. McMahon, Austin wouldn't have been nearly as popular, sad but true. Correct. However, without these guys, there would have never been a Stone Cold Steve Austin. He would have took that shitty gimmick as the ringmaster, and we never would have gotten Stone Cold.
yes
Does
and
everybody
no.
know that story?
Yes and no. I mean, I feel like eventually it would have happened. It just happened a lot quicker because he had more creative freedom to say what he wanted and pretty much do what he wanted.
Do you
And
know why?
Paul Heyman also had the wherewithal to bring that out of people because, you know, almost everybody there came out of that a star. Everybody who wasn't one at that time, you know, the Dudleys, Austin, you know, Sandman was already a big star then. Rob Van Dam, Mysterio.
Yes. And there's a reason for that, Daniel, and that's what I was getting at. You know the story of how Steve Austin ended up in ECW, though, right?
Yes.
So Bischoff had fired him by FedEx. Paul calls him, and he goes, "Hey, buddy, what's up?" You know, fucking bullshit. Just sitting at home, they fucking fired my ass. You want to talk about it? Well, yeah, shit, let's talk about it. You want to talk about it on the air? Well, shit, pal, how am I going to do that? I got a television show. You have a grievance. Why not come on my show and air it? And so he shows up and he does these great skits called Monday Night Jericho, where he makes fun of everybody in WCW. And he says, I can't be a star in the ECW. I'm not good enough. I wasn't good enough for WCW. Why would I ever be good enough for the great ECW? It was some of the best television ever. Next to Brian fucking Pillman fighting with a pencil. But with Heyman allowing Steve to come out and be Steve Williams airing his grievance against WCW, when he finally got the call from Connecticut to go to WWE, he said, I'm not doing this shitty ringmaster gimmick. It's basically stunning Steve Austin in a new package. Why don't you let me try this? They did, and the rest is history. You have the biggest draw in the history of professional wrestling ever, still to this day.
Yeah, because he wrestled as the ringmaster for a little while until DiBiase left.
I mean, he was Stone Cold Steve Austin, but he wasn't Austin 316. It was a trip the first time I heard his real name. I was like, Steve Williams. I was like, what does Dr. Death think about this? Difference is, Steve Williams is Steve Austin's real name. Steve Williams was a character for Dr. Death. Or at least I think. But I think that's also why he went with Steve Austin, because Steve Williams was already taken by Dr. Death. I actually think that's what it was.
That's true.
I haven't seen
Great,
a Stone Cold
but
Dr.
he
Green.
didn't pick the name. Dutch Mantel's the one who picked it.
For Steve Austin?
Yeah.
See, that's not what I heard.
Yeah.
I heard that he chose
Actually,
Austin because it was the
admitted
city he was from.
Yeah, if you watch his Stone Cold's documentary they did, he even says that, when he went to, I think it was Memphis, Dutch was the running the territory, and when he came in, because Jerry Jarrett's the one that sent him there, he went in as Steve Williams, and Dutch Mantell said, "You can't do that because we've already got a Steve Williams. That you have to change your name." And that night, he couldn't figure something out of what sounded good. And Steve Austin said that Dutch is the one that came up with Steve Austin, and he wasn't sure where it came from. I guess, and they say, I guess because he thought he was from Austin, Texas, which of course is not true, but. Yeah,
close. But I had heard that he didn't want to do Steve Austin either because of the $6 million man.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, his real name isn't even Steve Williams. It's actually Steve Anderson.
Yeah, I think he got adopted though, right? Because his stepdad's name was Steve Williams.
Yeah, probably. Let's see here. He signed with World Championship Wrestling in 1991 and adopted the persona of Stunning Steve Austin. And then that's when they put him in with Brian Pillman and made the Hollywood Blondes. First seminar cost $45. Adam's training, blah, blah, blah. Steve Anderson. He was renamed Steve Austin by Memphis booker Dutch Mantell during the merger of WCCW and Continental Wrestling and Association. And they became... The name change occurred to avoid confusion with Dr. Death Steve Williams, a well-known wrestler during that time. Austin later returned to Dallas, managed by Percy Pringle. Ooh, yes! I always wondered why Lee Majors never made a fuss about the Steve Austin moniker. Guess Vince was like, "Here's money, pal." Probably.
I'll take it.
Percy Pringle is, or was, Paul Bearer. That's why I did the ooh yes.
Yes. A little
right.
bit of trivia.
Oh.
Did you know that he actually was a licensed mortician?
Yes. So, we're here to talk about my all-time favorite wrestling company, ECW, and how they tie in to the whole Monday Night War. Am I the only one that knows anything about this?
No.
The only time when I first got introduced to ECW was, after WWE bought them. Like I said, I'm a late bloomer for all this stuff, so I will just be over here if you need me.
You watched the reintroduction in 2005.
Yeah.
No, with ECW, it was always ECW. It just wasn't Extreme Championship Wrestling. It was Eastern Championship Wrestling at one point.
Until Paul Heyman took over the booking.
Yes.
From, what the hell was his name?
That I
Can't remember.
But
Tables get anxiety when a Dudley's around. Yes, sir. But yeah, he took it over, and the very first time the words Extreme Championship Wrestling were used was at a Eastern Championship Wrestling NWA dual event where Shane Douglas was supposed to win the Eastern Championship I can't talk. Eastern Championship Wrestling Championship from somebody in the NWA. Or no. I'm sorry. He was supposed to win the NWA Championship. And he's holding it up. Yes, Shane Douglas cut that promo, and that was it. Yes. He holds it up. He goes, "This is it, Dad." Makes fun of the Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat, a bunch of other great classic wrestlers. And he says they can all kiss my ass, throws the belt down, grabs the Eastern Championship Wrestling belt, holds it up, and deems it the ECW World Heavyweight Championship. And from that night on, they were no longer associated with the NWA. They were their own monster. And Paul was actually one of the very first promoters to do reality-based booking, because he did start booking before Bischoff did. So, again, there'd be no NWO if there was no ECW, going more realistic. The issue was everybody thought ECW was real. It wasn't fake like WCW and WWF at the time, because of the ultra violence that Paul would bring in. But there would be no Rey Mysterio in America. There would be no Chris Jericho in America. There would be no Chris Benoit, no Eddie Guerrero, no Dean Malenko, no Perry Saturn. The list goes on and on and on. Hell, Mick Foley probably wouldn't be as big a name as he was without ECW. Because when WCW fucked him, he went to ECW. So, Paul Heyman doesn't get credit for any of that. None of it. And all those guys left ECW at almost the exact same time, gutting his roster. Do I have it right?
True. And at the same time, though, whenever that happened, even Paul admitted to this, that he always had somebody waiting.
Yes. I was going to get to that. Daniel, but I wanted to get to it chronologically. But yes, that is one of the greatest moments in pay-per-view history. I was there. I heard it live.
That's true.
Greatest night of my life was going to ECW One Night Stand. But for me, that was the draw of ECW, was that ECW didn't look like WWE. It didn't look like WCW. Those two were basically mirror images of each other, because at the time they were still both childish and cartoonish. ECW was real. You had the Sandman blind Tommy Dreamer. Or no, other way around. Tommy Dreamer blind the Sandman, and the Sandman stayed off TV for weeks at a time, playing it off. And then you have, or was it Raven? I don't know. It was somebody.
Sandman.
No, Sandman was the one that was blinded, but I can't remember who blinded him. But then they're in the ring taunting Woman, actually, Nancy Benoit, God rest her soul. He comes around, peels the bandages off his eyes, grabs a kendo stick, and just goes to town. Or a Singapore cane, as it was known in ECW. But then you also had the night that the Tommy Dreamer, God damn it, will you stop messaging me? Okay, you know I'm fucking producing. Damn. Anyway. Where was... Oh, the night that Tommy Dreamer became a household name. Sandman whips him with a cane. And Tommy Dreamer refused to stop. All of a sudden, he's hardcore. He's hardcore. He's hardcore. Those were moments that would have never happened in WCW or WWE at the time. It wasn't until Paul started making money on pay-per-view, and after Paul brought ECW to Raw, and you have Sabu jump off the R on Raw, that all of a sudden Vince is like, wow, this shit makes money. This shit is great. That's when they started bringing in Attitude.
That's true.
What
But
a lot of
they
people
were
do,
already
right?
on payroll.
Huh?
ECW partly was funded by Vince.
I was just about to get to that. What a lot of people didn't know was that Paul was getting money from WWE because Vince felt sorry for them and wanted to help an upstart company. It wasn't on any of ECW's books because then at that point, Paul would have had to sit there and say, I'm being funded by WWE, and he probably would have lost a lot of TV contracts. When Bubba and Devon were shooting on the crowd at Heatwave, like, oh crap, gonna be a riot. Shockingly, no riot. Right. But the Dudleys also had to be funneled out the back door before the crowd left, or else they would have gotten their asses beat, and Devon admitted that. Bubba Ray did too. But that was the fun of ECW. You never knew what you were going to get. Paul got out of so many lawsuits from things that happened during his television program because his father was a lawyer. Not only was his father a lawyer, his father was a Jewish lawyer. And who wants to mess with them? I mean, it was... Rey Mysterio literally got put through the hood of a guy's car. Windshield shattered. Paul didn't have to pay a penny. It was awesome. The stuff he got away with. But yeah, to promote One Night Stand, Vince invited ECW onto Raw. Mass Transit. Don't even get me started on Mass Transit. I do not want to talk about, God rest his soul. God, I can't remember his name now. I just had it in my head. The fuck was his name? Damn it, I just watched The Dark Side of the Ring on him. New Jack! I don't want to talk about New Jack.
That was a crazy motherfucker.
New Jack almost killed somebody in the middle of an ECW ring. On pay-per-view. Because the kid lied about his age. That's all I'll say about New Jack. But so much crazy crap happened, and WWE is actually partially to blame for ECW getting shut down. And a lot of people don't know that story. Do you know what I'm talking about, Josh?
I know part of it.
Why don't you share your part?
Just put you on the spot.
I mean, I know they took the funding away, and that hurt them quite a bit too.
That was part of it. Wasn't the major part of it.
Oh yeah. Now I think about it, they that was when it was right after they had their first pay-per-view. They got a TV deal, and with it, was it 3 or 6 months, they ended up canceling it and going with WWE. It was TNN.
It was a few years after Barely Legal, because that TV deal happened in 2000. Barely Legal happened in 97. But yes, basically what happened was TNN signs a deal for them to air ECW. And they had some very explicit rules. No music videos, no heavy metal music, no profanity, no replays. Within the first 5 minutes of the first episode, Paul breaks all of them. They do the original ECW entrance with the Harry Slash theme, the all that. The first match they show is a replay of the main event from the pay-per-view that happened the night before. Within 10 minutes, Jerry Styles says, "Damn it." And obviously, there was blood and violence and carnage everywhere. It's ECW. So TNN secretly backdoors a deal with Vince McMahon where TNN is going to pay WCW multi-million dollars to bring Raw to TNN because their contract with the USA Network and NBC had dried up. Vince didn't want to go back. The issue is they signed a 5-year deal with ECW. They hadn't even been on the air a year. Paul said they were in breach and that they refused to get off the air until TNN kicked them off the air. Sure enough, they do. No more ECW. In comes Vince. ECW's dead in the water. Now here's the thing. TNN wasn't paying ECW. They were paying Vince. So yeah, they were losing revenue stream because they were only getting paid by pay-per-view. They were only getting a fraction of their tickets, and they were only getting a fraction of merch. So where's the money coming from to keep everything afloat? The live audiences were great, but all of that is going to pay for hall rental, medical personnel having to be on scene, pay the wrestlers. There's no money left. And there was barely enough to pay the wrestlers. You hear tons of stories about guys that didn't get paid. But Taz, probably one of the most famous names to come out of ECW, flat out said Vince never owed, or Paul didn't owe him a penny. He was paid up before he went to WWE. But he saw the writing on the wall and saw that ECW was going under, so he had no choice. Same thing with the Dudleys. Who else left around that time? But any of those guys that showed up in WWE in early 2000, 2001, they all knew Paul had no money. That's why they left. And that was the sad part about it. If they hadn't gotten screwed by Vince and WWE, ECW probably could have found another network and gone there and been prosperous. But Vince offered Paul enough money to cover the rest of the payroll that he had and bought the rights to ECW.
I'd say that's true to a degree, but at that time, towards the end of that, according to some of the interviews that he did, like with Tommy Dreamer and all that, they say that they were out of money then, and you were robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Mm-hmm.
And there were a lot. You're right. There were a lot of people that weren't getting paid.
Yes, but the only thing Vince was paying for was because they brought Too Cold Scorpio on to do some stuff with WWE, but Too Cold Scorpio was bringing in money from a licensing deal that they had with Tommy Boy Records. So when he went to go to WWE, Paul was losing all that money from that contract with Tommy Boy. So Vince was basically just covering whatever money Tommy Boy Records was going to pay ECW. CLA baseball fan says, how much longer does the extreme style last when WWE had that had the in-ring that they had in 2002? You talking about Invasion? I just need clarification on that. Or are you talking about WWE CW that happened in 2006? Because we haven't gotten there yet. That trash. That ended too many careers. But I mean, that's basically all. No, I'm talking about in-ring style. Okay, but without ECW, WWE would have never gone hardcore. They would have never gone to that place. And they went hardcore before 2001. They were hardcore in 98, 99. I mean, they were doing Attitude Era stuff back then. I mean, even WCW was trying to capitalize on it because they brought Sandman in for a very short amount of time under the name Hack, and that's all he was because he sucked when he was there because he couldn't do half the shit he did in ECW. And he even admitted that.
Their hardcore division in WCW was a joke.
It was basically just the Sandman under the name Hack. I mean, they had Raven, but they weren't even using Raven properly. They had Public Enemy, but they stripped all the great shit away about Public Enemy. They had the Nasty Boys, which they didn't get from the ECW, but they had the Nasty Boys. The Nasty Boys were one of the most hardcore teams that were out there before hardcore was hardcore. And they botched all of it. And now you have they can't call them TNA anymore, but what used to be TNA, Impact Wrestling, and AEW trying to capitalize on all this because WWE refuses to put an ECW show on the network. And yes, I understand concussions, bloodborne illness. I understand all of that. But there's a way that you can do ECW without the blood. You can still do the violence. You can still do all of that without the blood. It works. You don't have to do chair shots to the front of the dome. You don't have to do any of that. And Ravens admitted that he didn't like doing it back in WWE or ECW for that matter, because yeah, you rattle the fucking skull. CTE like a motherfucker. Something to think about outside of the ECW topic, the amount of hush money paid to the person. We talked about that. I don't think so. He paid way more than $3 million for WCW. Way more than $3 million.
Yeah, I think it was. They referred to it as pennies on the dollar, but I think it was. Wasn't it something like 6 or 7 million?
It was more than that.
I am curious.
It was way more than that. There's no way that Time Warner would have sold it for that cheap. I know they wanted to get rid of it, but
okay, we were both wrong. So this is what it says when you Google it. AOL Time Warner sold the trademarks for WCW's name and logo to the WWF for $2.5 million in 2001. Way off. We were both way off. But it says that with the addition of the video library, which was 1.7, it brought it up to 4.2. So that was definitely pennies on the dollar for what it was worth. And it would have Bischoff goes on record of saying that it would have been worth a lot more had they still had TV rights. And he had an investment group that was in process of buying that.
Mm-hmm. He actually was signing the contract the day that the deal was done with WWE.
Yep.
I could have sworn it was for way more money than that.
I had to Google it because I thought it was a little more than that too. And I just watched part of it. But still, I mean, if you think about the video library and all that, all the years that they have, it's crazy.
They got that. They basically got it for free.
Pretty much. All they did was buy the rights and the footage. That was it.
Yeah, Bob Orton almost gave Undertaker hepatitis from a blade drop. You're right, and that's why they stopped doing that. But I mean, my point is that WWE could be charging way more for the network, and obviously now that they're on Peacock, they're not charging shit. But they could have been charging way more for the network, and giving you exclusive content that was under the WCW and ECW banner. And then they could have been making more on their investment when all they wanted was the tape library to begin with,
Now,
which is why wrestlers didn't leave or didn't come to WWE right away when WCW was purchased, because their contracts still had to be honored by AOL Time Warner.
yes. Now, within regards to the invasion angle, I know we haven't gotten there yet, but within regards to that, when they decided they were going to bring ECW back, Shane had the idea of making it a strictly internet-only show. And, of course, that got shot down. And that would have been successful. I mean, you know, all jokes aside about the McMahon family, he's actually a smart cat.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows now? I mean, it probably would have worked.
Yes. And you know what? I mean, I honestly do think it would have, because at the time, you got to think about it. WCW had their own audience. WWE had their own audience. Everybody wanted to see the WCW guys not go against the WWE guys. They wanted what they knew, essentially. But if you think about it, the one guy we never thought we'd see in WWE ever was Sting. We got it probably 15 years too late, but we got it.
And the weird thing about that, though, is if you listen to Steve Borden when he, in some of the interviews he's done, he fully admits that the only reason he didn't go, because he had offers back in the 80s and the 90s to go, was because he saw what they were doing with ex-WCW guys, and he thought that would be his fate.
Yes, that's exactly what it was. He was afraid that he was not going to get used properly. But then he heard how much money was coming out of some of these Legends contracts, and he's like, I can still work. I got to go. But that's neither here nor there. It was a great time to be a wrestling fan. It was an amazing time for me as a fan, because I got into it because of ECW. I started watching WCW. I was hoping Sting would never step foot there, but oh well. Well, he's still killing it over in AEW, so there's that.
I like that character a bit better.
Oh, yeah. I actually got to see Sting wrestle live when he was with TNA. Well, one of the times they came to Cleveland. Unfortunately, it was during the era that Hogan was still in charge, so it sucked, but it is what it is. But for me, I know you're going to do top 10, but we're kind of running out of time. So I'll just give my top 5. Sting is the reason I'm a fan. Triple H is part of the reason that I've been working as hard as I have to fix the issues with my knees, because I saw how quickly he was able to return. And I'm just like, if he can do it, I can do it. Then, of course, Shawn Michaels. Can't do anything without Shawn, with the way the modern part of the business is. Ric Flair. There's nobody bigger, in my opinion, than Rick. But for me, my all-time favorite wrestler, and this is just because I'm a huge ECW guy, is Rob Van Dam. Guy's damn near 60, and he's still wrestling on a nightly basis. And he's one hell of a cool dude. One hell of a cool dude. I met him at a con, and I was asking him questions about the old ECW days. I didn't really care about WWE or anything like that, or WWE ECW, because that shit was garbage. But I mean, you had them return in 2005. One Night Stand 05 was probably the greatest night of professional wrestling I've ever seen. Even though there was some storyline elements put into it with the Invaders, but they all got their asses whipped, so it didn't really matter. Mick Foley and Joey Styles on commentary. What's better than that? That's all I got to say. 2006, it was all a work. It was just to bring in the new era of ECW. Lasted 6 months because they fired Paul. That's all I got to say. If they had never fired Paul Heyman, December to Dismember would have never happened. And that was the end of ECW.
Well, in my opinion, being WWE being what it is, and I'll say this and I'll jump into mine, they should have never resurrected it in the first place.
They should have done One Night Stand 05, given the fans one last night.
Sorry.
And then that was
What did it say?
So,
Van Dam passes his cup, it's going to look like a giant bong.
yep.
Yeah. They should have only done that one pay-per-view and that.
Mhm.
And Paul begged him to
100%.
want to do it.
But the issue is, they did the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD. The damn thing sold millions and millions and millions of copies, made Vince McMahon, not a single person that was involved in that documentary, millions and millions of dollars. And Vince is like, well, hell, there's still something to be done with Extreme. I bet we could do it WWE style. Yeah, let's put the fucking Miz in ECW. Really? And that motherfucker's from my hometown. No.
So that's all I got to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I mean, obviously, growing up as a kid, my idol was Sting, blonde, flat top. Just because that's the way it was in the 80s. Then, of course, later on, for me, it was, of course, Austin. He's the reason I got back into it in the late 90s. And a lot of people are going to hate on me for this, but as much as people give a lot of shit about Cena, he's not that bad. Yeah.
I'm
But
waiting for the.
in all seriousness, I mean, you think about it, all the things that he's done, not outside of the ring, but all the people that he's wrestled. He's been a polarizing figure for a long time. He's won.
What fucking Twilight Zone?
Yeah, I know, right?
I answer.
For me, Undertaker's won too. Everybody says that Ric Flair is one of the best, and he is, but next to him is The Undertaker. I think they're pretty much neck and neck. Not title versus title, but you know what I mean, as far as longevity, being able to stay relevant for as long as they have. And then
Is Flair still relevant though?
not anymore.
I mean, after the Dark Side of the Ring on the plane ride from hell, I don't think anybody wants anything to do with Ric Flair.
Well, I'm just saying accomplishments and things of that nature. But I wasn't really a Shawn Michaels guy, still not. I really truly liked Mick Foley, both as as Mankind, Dude Love, Cactus Jack, but I liked him when he was just himself, even though they were extensions of him. What's that for? And then during the Attitude Era, it was kind of a toss-up. I liked, and it's not really one person, but I liked DX as a whole. Not so much because they were like my favorite, but because it was like the stuff they were doing with Austin. You never knew what was going to happen, and when it did, it was usually at somebody else's expense. So I mean, for me, it was of course during high school. So I mean, it was a great time for me. I didn't get to watch a lot of pay-per-views, but I watched it as much as I possibly could.
First pay-per-view I ever watched WCW Hog Wild 97. The main event was Diamond Dallas Page. Oh my God. Diamond Dallas Page and Jay Leno versus Dennis Rodman and Hulk Hogan.
Now, was that ECW or was that WCW?
That was WCW.
Okay. For some reason I thought you said ECW.
Mm.
But I don't remember what the first pay-per-view was. I remember it being... It was probably around that time, 98, 99, but it was WWE at the time, and I cannot
Well, they
remember.
were WWE until 2005.
Hmm?
They didn't become WWE until 2005.
Well, I know, but everybody knows it as WWE. You know, it's not the World Wildlife Fund.
Yeah, you got to get the F out.
Yeah, but I mean, that's when I got back into it, 98, 99, and I stayed a fan, believe it or not, until, of course, Austin had to retire. What was that, WrestleMania 25, 24?
Austin still hasn't retired. He can't wrestle a full schedule anymore. But the goddamn it, son, he just had a match at WrestleMania.
I loved it. You could tell he was a little rusty, but I loved it. It was like
The
nostalgia.
NBA Finals practice to go to Nitro tapings. Only Rodman.
But that's this week's
I mean,
Mhm.
there were so many great moments. So many great moments.
huge one. I mean, you're right. You know, it was a good era, and I don't think it. What was it? It was less than 10 years, I think, right?
It was technically September 95 until March 2001.
So not quite 6 years. So
Because that's when Vince McMahon announced that he bought WCW in my hometown.
competition. There'll never be another time. Ever. People talking about AEW versus WWE, and of course,
Not the
it doesn't
same.
matter if they're on the same day. It's not the same.
It's not the same because it's two completely different products.
Yes.
AEW has its own audience. WWE has its own audience. If you're a diehard smark, then yeah, you're going to watch everything, like my friend Roger. Me, there are nights I can barely get through AEW because I don't think their product's as great as people make it out to be.
No, it's not. It's their product has elements of what
Old
was.
WCW Monday Nitro.
Yeah, what was. And it's not to say anybody on the program's bad. It's just it's a has been era, if I can say it like that. With all but
In my opinion, the problem with AEW is it's exactly like what a lot of people accused Eric Bischoff of in the 90s. Blank checkbook with Papa Ted's money. I'm talking about Ted Turner. And signing anybody and everybody he wanted to. The same thing is happening now with Tony Khan with the money that he scammed out of his father from the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm sorry he scammed that money out of his father. Now, the second somebody is released from WWE, he's on the phone. Do you have a 30, 60, or 90? And then they plan accordingly from there. Look at Jeff Hardy. Everybody knew Jeff was going to end up in AEW with his brother. And what happens a month after he's there? He's in jail. For go figure, the same thing WWE accused him of when they fired him. But not only that, but I mean, you got Moxley, you got Andrade Cien Almas, you've got Rusev, you've got Okay, name everybody that's been released from WWE in the past 2 years. They're in fucking ECW or AEW. That's my problem with them. If you would have just stuck with who you had and continued to bring in international talent from New Japan, from Mexico, you bought Ring of Honor. You have a whole new fucking roster. What do you need? Is this thing on? Hey, Tony Khan, stop bringing in former WWE guys.
And
You
now
gonna
with
do
that being said, it's time to end.
Is Tyler going to do a top 5?
So,
My top 5. Okay, so I can do it real quick because as we have established, I've gotten in at different times for wrestling, so mine are going to be childish on kind of thing. So for me, WCW was Goldberg. I'm sorry, I know he not a lot wrestling talent, but the presence was awesome.
was your second one Fandango or Tyler Breeze?
You know what? I might just say yes, just to fuck with you. So no, then like, you know, the Hardys got me back into wrestling, Jeff specifically.
Back before they were drug addicts.
Right. And that's what got me watching TNA a little bit, was when he went over there. So it got me into like AJ Styles, and then when he came to W, I got back into AJ Styles.
I love AJ. Great guy.
Yeah. And then give me a second. And then it was, for me, it was Dean Ambrose, although I know it's Moxley now in AEW. As far as the Shield goes, he was the best.
Well, when he was in Florida Championship Wrestling, he was using John Moxley too.
Okay.
It wasn't until they started the Shield in NXT that he became Dean Ambrose. But
yeah, he was that. And then Jericho's always, you know, from early on. I mean, just his promos alone. I mean, you got like CM Punk, so it's kind of one of those. CM Punk got me back into wrestling as well, but Jericho's kind of, we'll consider. Who am I thinking of? Oh no, I don't know. That's 6, but fuck it, whatever.
You know what? You just made the list.
I mean, there are so many names I could have put on that list.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's not just because I didn't think of them, but I was trying to do somebody from each company, you know, especially from back then. I mean, there's so many now. I mean, Kenny Omega.
Mm-hmm.
You can't talk about modern wrestling without talking about Kenny.
Yep.
MJF. I mean, the guy is the greatest heel in the history of professional wrestling. That man is magic, and he has a license to print money. And if Tony Khan fucks that up, he's an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say the best, but he's up there.
I would probably say he's
Arguably
yes.
the best. Arguably the best.
Mm-hmm.
Who would you put above him?
Thus the arguing.
In the top 5, maybe?
Yeah.
But I don't watch it, so.
Okay, then you didn't see the greatest promo in the history of professional wrestling a couple weeks ago.
Probably not.
When he literally called his boss a fucking mark.
Well, and he is. That wasn't a lie.
No denying that. But we got to do this again.
Mm-hmm.
We got to do a true top 10. And if you guys want to talk Benoit, I'll talk Benoit.
I would have loved to have added, because he was definitely one. My longest stint of wrestling was he would have absolutely been on my list. Yeah.
Tragedy that happened.
Yes.
That's all I'll say about that.
That's this week's episode.
It's bedtime.
Shit.
No, it's past bedtime.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Also true.
So.
All right.
But don't go nowhere afterwards, guys. I got to talk to you about something.
Uh-oh. I didn't do it.
Maybe that's the problem.
This is true.
All right. We'll see y'all next week.